I think that's probably the most noticeable thing that's changed is just how we bring teams together now to make sure that everything we're doing is privacy compliant from the start of a project rather than, bolting it on at the end. It shouldn't really be like that. So that's been really great. And I actually really enjoy that level of collaboration.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Identity Architects, the InfoSum podcast that spotlights the leaders in the media industry shaping the future of data-driven advertising. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti, and this week I had the opportunity to sit down with Camilla Child, Director of Commercial Data Strategy at the Telegraph Media Group. Camilla and I discussed the Telegraph's approach to future-proofing their addressability, multiple innovative product launches, and its status as an OG member of the InfoSum ecosystem. Before we jump into that conversation, this is a reminder to hit that subscribe button to be alerted when new episodes of Identity Architects land. But without any further delay, here's my chat with Camilla. For anyone who may be unfamiliar, can you give us a quick introduction to yourself and also to the Telegraph?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So I am Camilla. I'm Camilla Child, Director of Commercial Data Strategy at the Telegraph Media Group. So that's a bit of a mouthful in terms of job title, I'm aware. Basically, I lead on and manage our strategy for the commercial business all around how we use data. So the best use of data for our commercial arm of the business. So that could be things like working with advertisers to reach their target audiences, creating new data products, and obviously evolving to meet the industry's kind of challenges and needs as we go. In terms of the Telegraph itself, it is a 169-year-old British newspaper. It's a premium news brand. It was the first British newspaper actually to launch a website back in 1994. And we currently run on a subscription model, which we switched over to back in 2018. So we've kind of got this heritage brand and all of this history, but really quite innovative, I think, in terms of how we've approached our digital ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like we'll have tons to cover off, as you say, a rapidly evolving industry. So definitely a lot to kind of cover off. But before we get into kind of the topic related questions, we're going to start the way we always do, which is with a series of quick fire questions that are just designed for us to get to know you a little bit better. Starting with, what's your earliest memory of advertising?
I have two that I can think of. They're both TV, which I think is probably a recurring theme in terms of people's earliest memories of advertising, it seems. So one was the Coca-Cola Christmas ad, which I'm sure you've had lots of people say in the past. It's just so iconic and so memorable, and obviously still running, which is remarkable, really. The other one, which is a bit more of a curveball, I don't know if you would remember this or recollect. There was this ad for this, I think it was a game called the Dream Phone, it was called the Dream Phone. It was something like that. And it was this hideous pink plastic phone thing that I think there was a board game attached to it or something like that. And it was, I don't know the rules, I don't know the purpose of it, but I just remember thinking that this was absolutely iconic, and both in their very different ways, very aspirational and clearly very memorable. The Dream Phone actually came up in the office not that long ago, and other people were remembering it, but no one seems to know anyone who actually had one. So I don't know where all the Dream Phones were or where they've gone, but clearly I remember the product to some degree.
Yeah, I love that. I remember both. And actually, I don't think the Coca-Cola Holidays Are Coming advert has ever come up before, which I've always been shocked by because it's my earliest memory of adadvertising as well. Like, it's just such a kind of iconic ad. But yeah, that's the first time that's come up, so I'm thrilled.
I'm glad I could do that for you.
So if you take yourself back to those days, what did you want to be when you were younger? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So, I mean, when I was actually a child, I guess, the only job that I can ever remember actually wanting is pirate, but specifically Elizabethan pirate. I don't think I had any idea what piracy really entailed. I can't sail. I think it was really just I liked the clothes, and that has influenced my sartorial choices to some extent as an adult, I suppose. But obviously not a pursuable career. As I got older, I had, I guess, a bit of a crisis around, well, what do I want to do sort of in the future. I really enjoyed studying, and I studied classics. So I studied Latin and ancient Greek, which obviously nothing to do with my career now, and I really enjoyed that. But I knew I didn't want to pursue academia or archaeology or anything like that. I knew I wanted to be working in the business world, and luckily everything's kind of fallen into place. I've got a career that kind of meets what I wanted it to.
So what was your first job in media or advertising or marketing then?
So my first job, it was more in marketing, I guess. I was a marketing and PR intern for a jewelry designer. That was sort of my first proper job straight after university. So I loved it. It was kind of unusual. It was not in London. It was out in the countryside where I grew up, and it was a really small business, really small team, lovely people, lovely products, and it was just a really nice introduction to the working world. Really, it was very bizarre. It was on a farm. It was the office was kind of an office space on a farm, so there were chickens running around outside. It was all very idyllic in some ways, but it was just such a nice introduction to the working world. It's quite distant from what I do now in terms of, I guess it's not actually that distant. I was sort of dealing with customers, dealing with wholesalers, working on the website and things like that. So there's some similarities, but it was, as I said, it was a lovely introduction to the industry in some regards, and just a really nice way to start my career.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an idyllic way to kind of start your career for sure. So what drew you to the advertising industry then? From that to where you are today, working at Telegraph Media Group, what drew you into it, the industry, and then what keeps you in it to this day?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, and I found that a little bit alarming when I was starting out working, not having a really clear path. But I've realized actually that I think that's what I wanted. I wanted a job and a career where the future wasn't all laid out in front of me, where there wasn't a really clear, defined path, that there would always be some kind of unknowns. And, digital and digital advertising really, as I said, meets that need that I had for something where it wasn't clear exactly how things were going to pan out. I knew I wanted to work in an industry that was really fast paced and challenging, and crucially where things were always changing. And I think we're really lucky that we get to work in an environment and in an industry where you don't know exactly what's going to happen next. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Constant change is definitely something you have to get used to in our industry.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I agree. If you thrive in that environment, then it's a perfect industry for you. What advice would you give to someone that's just starting out in their career in our industry?
I mean, there's so many things that you could say, especially when you look back on your own experience and what you've learned. But I think the best advice I could probably give to somebody, it's not actually specific to media and to the industry. It's more kind of general advice about starting out, working and your career. I think one thing that I learned personally was your career is really your own and it's not somebody else's. You don't have to do exactly the same thing as someone else. And I think I fell into that trap of, especially not knowing exactly where I was going at the start, comparing yourself to other people and, am I on the right path? Am I on the right track? And I think there's that notion perhaps that you need to get it right the first time and you need to know everything at the start. But I don't think careers are really like that. I think it's more a question of a constant evolution as you're working, and you should be always, learning and growing. I think just taking it seriously, taking yourself seriously, taking other people seriously is important. And as I said, you don't need to know everything right at the start. You don't need to get everything right the first time. But I do think you need to learn as much as quickly as possible. I think that's the best thing you can possibly do in any industry, in any walk of life. Just really learn and absorb as much as you can, ask as many questions as you can at the start. That will probably stand you in the best possible stead, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Ask questions, and as you say, that not comparing yourself to others and going on your own journey and kind of riding that journey is such an important perspective to have, and a great piece of advice. A two-part question for you. What keeps you awake at night? And then what gets you up in the morning? What gets you motivated in the morning?
So I was actually talking about this with a colleague earlier today, and he said, it was my colleague Anthony Crocker, he said, in terms of what keeps you up at night, it's really just become a white noise of trauma, I think, was his, in terms of work, in terms of what's going on in the industry, in terms of all the things that could keep you up at night. There's just so much going on. And the answer, to be honest, is not much work-wise really keeps me up anymore. And that's by no means because I'm a really relaxed, laid-back person at all, because I'm not. But I think there's so much going on that it sort of desensitizes you in some regards to the challenges, because there'll always be challenges and you'll always find a way to answer them. You always find a way to meet them, whether that's cookie blocking or, like the Oracle news that came out a little while ago, or, just massive business changes or whatever. There'll always be stuff like this. And one thing I compare it with actually is when GDPR was kind of really kicking off a few years ago, that was such a big deal and everyone was talking about it. And it was really like such a huge thing. But now it's there's just so many more things happening all the time, so many big news stories and so many things breaking, so many things changing as you go. So I honestly, it's not that I'm relaxed at all. I'm really not. But work-wise, there's no one particular thing kind of keeping me up at night, because I just think we'll get on with it and we'll find a way. But in terms of what gets me up in the morning, I think it's always looking forward to what's next, and again that stimulation of there's always more to do, there's always loads going on. I think that's really exciting, and that means that no 2 days are the same. There's always challenges, but I think that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And yeah, I think, as far as kind of motivation and as you say, what keeps you up at night, there's so much change, as you say, it almost does become desensitizing, but also so much of it is out of our control to a certain degree. And there's so many things happening that you can't really get too stressed about things that you can't necessarily have a direct control over all the time. So it's good to hear that that's not keeping you awake at night. and
other things do, but
yeah, exactly. We do work in an incredibly complex industry. How would you describe what you do within media and advertising to, say, a 10-year-old?
It's really challenging. I think in describing it to anybody is challenging, whether that's a friend who works in a different industry or your grandparents or a 10-year-old or whoever it might be. It's so tough. When I first started out in my job or previous iterations, I really tried to explain it accurately whenever somebody would ask what I do. The honest answer is I now don't. I go for the most sort of top line answer I possibly can, which is a complete cop out, I know, but for the sake of conversational continuity, I think it's usually the best way to go. So I normally just say that I work at a newspaper, I work on the website specifically, and I think of new ideas and ways that we can do things better, basically, on the advertising side of things. So I keep it very vague, and I know that's a complete cop-out by not even attempting to describe the data ecosystem or what we do with data, which, as you said, is so complicated. But I think people are fairly clued up now, actually, in terms of advertising and ads they see, and seeing the same ad multiple times and things like that. So I think you can go a little bit deeper, but yeah, I usually keep it fairly top line.
I mean, I think you're in a fortunate position given the Telegraph is a household name. So I feel like most people will have heard of the Telegraph, and therefore that kind of gives you that one up anyway, that they then can understand at least where you work and what your company does, even if you don't get too much into the specifics of exactly what your role is. The final of our quick fire questions, and a personal favorite of mine. If there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
I think this is possibly the hardest question that you've asked thus far. I agonized. I was going through my Spotify thinking, is it this one? Is it this one? I've landed on Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights. Because I love her. She's a genius woman. I love people who are relentlessly themselves. I would say they don't try, not sort of trying to be anybody else, just being themselves. And with that song in particular, obviously it's a beautiful song, but I just love the mirroring of one genius, iconic woman singing about the work of another genius, iconic woman, obviously centuries apart, but it's just two beautiful works of art together.
Yeah, I love that. That's a fantastic choice, and it will get added to we have a playlist on Spotify. We add everyone's choices to that playlist, so we will add that.
I'll have to check it out,
and everyone can. Yeah, you definitely will, and we'll share the link to it with everyone so you can all enjoy it. It's in the description of this episode, so you can listen to that choice and all the other choices we've had. We'll move on to some of the more topic-related questions now, and clearly the ongoing saga that is cookie deprecation has dominated the headlines for the last few years. How has the Telegraph approached the cookieless future, and specifically, what strategy have you taken to maintaining scalable addressability in a post-cookie world?
Yeah, I mean, I was really enjoying the questions we had just now about what's your favorite song. I guess we can talk about this instead. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge challenge and has been basically for years now. So it's not new news. It's something that we've been working on for a really long time across a number of lines of the business, I guess. So really key to the way that we've approached the post-cookie world and addressability and just how the internet functions now, even before Google's changes. A key part of that is the fact that we moved to that subscription model a few years ago. That's obviously been key for our business and for our longevity and for the Telegraph as a news brand. it's also had massive positive ramifications for our advertising business and just the ways that we can engage with advertisers as well as our readership. So having a subscription model and really focusing on that relationship with our readers means we've got so much better engagement from our readers across our platforms. We relaunched our app as well, which is such an engaged audience too, a couple of years ago. So that's been key. And then the other side of that coin is obviously the first party data that we're able to glean and leverage off the back of understanding our users so much better, having people logging in to our environments so that we have a Telegraph ID, a persistent ID for all of those people that we can associate all of that data with and get this really holistic understanding of who that person is. So that's all been key, kind of getting our first party data in order and also working with the key technologies that allow us to really understand our users and our readers in the round, but also to reach them effectively. So we can reach 100% of our consented traffic with data-led, really, intelligently placed ad targeting. So working with the right partners has obviously been key for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's super fascinating time. And what I love about what you've just said is that it's all focused on the positives, actually, of moving to a cookieless world. So much has been written about kind of the negative side of cookie deprecation. But actually, I think for publishers and brands and media owners, there's actually a ton of positives that come from moving to that first party consented data world. So I love that that's kind of the approach the Telegraph has taken and that's kind of clearly your feelings on it as well. Obviously, you mentioned new technology, and the Telegraph was an early adopter of new technology like data clean rooms, with InfoSum powering the Unity solution. Can you talk to me a little bit about that solution and how that rollout has gone?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, definitely. I think we started working with InfoSum back in 2019. So we are OGs of the publisher world in terms
definitely.
of data clean room adoption, if you could call it that. So it's been InfoSum's been a key partner for us and was a key pillar of how we wanted to approach our cookieless strategy. We definitely saw the value of our own first party audiences that we could reach across our platforms, with all the data that we have, but also we really appreciated that we had a logged in environment, we had people logging into our properties, and B, that advertisers were going to have challenges in finding their audiences, digitally once cookie blocking really came into place. I mean, as we know, it's sort of already happened. Like cookie blocking already exists in certain browsers, but it was only going to become more of a challenge to advertisers. So we wanted to be able to use what we had, the benefits that we had, but also be able to support those advertisers in still, brands are still going to want to find their people. So we wanted to help them to do that. And one of the huge benefits of data clean room technologies is that it's new, it's exciting, it's innovative, but it works so much better than cookies did before. We're really talking about people-based marketing rather than cookie-based marketing. And I think that's so exciting. And a lot of the times with cookie blocking, we're thinking about, how can we kind of replicate the past or how can we work around it? Whereas this is actually, to me, fundamentally better. So I think that's a huge part of the appeal. In terms of Unity, that's how we've been approaching. That's our sort of initiative for cookieless data matching with brands who want to find their audiences. I would say that since 2019, we've learned a huge amount along the way. We've done, various different activations and matches, so many conversations with partners, with advertisers, agencies, with other publishers. We've really been trying to engage with anybody who would speak to us about it because it is such an innovative and new space. As I said, we've learned a lot. So we've adapted our proposition with Unity. I think it's now structured the best that we can to ensure not only the best performance for brands. We've seen fantastic results for brands when they use their data in this way, sort of up to 6 times higher than industry benchmarks using brand uplift studies when they apply their data and when they match it with publisher first party data and find exactly the right people. So we know that we can deliver that amazing performance, but we've now structured it as well so that we can get the best delivery of ads, the optimum kind of flexibility so that we can deliver those campaigns as best as possible across our properties. So, we've done a lot of work in that area. It's there's been challenges, and there still are, especially with something as innovative, as I said, as data clean rooms and data matching in this way. When we first started working with the technology, there just weren't that many brands who were there. The sort of ecosystem and the market didn't really exist yet. It was really just starting out. So that's really exciting to be, one of the first players in the game, I guess, but also really tough when you're trying to evangelize and kind of get the message out there. So, but obviously things have come a long way since then. Another kind of key point, I think, is that match rates have almost become inadvertently, I think, a new currency. And while that's really important, and looking at where your overlap is with different partners, that's really important to understand, but it's, I think, only one piece of the puzzle, and it doesn't necessarily dictate the full value of where your opportunities are. So I think it's really important, when we're talking to partners, to look at that bigger picture and try to see things in the round, as it were, rather than just looking at that one number or percentage of a match rate and seeing that as the yardstick for what your opportunity might look like, without focusing too much on what's the scale. It's about the quality and the opportunity rather than just the volume that you can achieve.
I agree. And I think it's been amazing for me. Obviously, I've been at InfoSum for long enough now that I can remember when the Telegraph first joined up. And it's just been amazing to see how that solution has evolved. And as you say, when you can look back and see how far we've come, in the moment, it can feel like things move slowly or that things are taking longer than we would hope. But actually, when you can look back and see how far we've come, it's an incredible benefit that people like you and I have, where we can look back and see that kind of journey we've been on, which is quite incredible. And speaking of product launches, congratulations on the recent launch of the Telegraph's research and insight agency, Compass. I'm interested to learn about Compass, the market need that it addresses, and how that offering has evolved since obviously its original launch, and kind of what excites you about developing Compass.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Compass is one of our newest initiatives in the market. It's really, really exciting for us. It's completely different from anything we've really done before as a brand, as a media owner. So it's really exciting in that regard. As you said, Compass is a new research and insights agency that we've launched from the Telegraph Media Group, from our business. So we sort of soft launched it in the market summer 2023, I would say. And we've sort of more formally launched it more recently, and it's really sort of meeting that need that brands have for research and for insights and immediacy and data that they can trust. So obviously brands need to understand their audiences, their industry, what's going on in the market, what's going on in the world. We live in very fast moving and fast changing times. It's always easy for them to reach the right information on the right audiences at speed. So we're trying to help to address that. Obviously, the research industry is absolutely enormous and very varied. So we think we've got something really interesting to offer in that space. We obviously have tons of first-party data, as I mentioned, across our site. This is a different way of us using it. It's a new way for us to allow brands to access the information and the insights that we have. We're in a really privileged position, I think, that we've already invested so much in our insights and research tools in-house. We've got the biggest reader panel of any UK news brand. We've got an expert team in-house, and that's something that we've built up organically for our own business, and that we've been using and leveraging to understand our own audiences. So we're really privileged to have all of that, but also we can see so much into sort of the two sides of the coin. We can run research, we can run surveys, we've got sort of historic data from years of research that we've done, but we can also see things happening in real time. We can see how readers are responding to the news as it unfolds. We can kind of both ask our readers and the people that we can speak to, what they're saying, what they're thinking, how they're feeling, but we can also compare that with what's actually happening, what they're really doing. We can cross-reference our findings to our on-site traffic, to how people are consuming the news, their search behaviors. Are they engaging with keywords differently on different topics, on different times of day? Are we seeing different behaviors in different parts of the country? Like, there's so many different things that we can do, and I think we've got such a unique level of insight there that we can offer, and it's a really different way, I think, of us working with our partners and of a premium publisher kind of bringing something different. It's evolved a lot, and it's really evolving organically, which is exciting. So we're kind of responding and staying as agile and nimble as we can. We started off with just a small roster of research products, and we're now increasing that out to work with both brands and agencies as well. So there's loads going on. We actually we won an AOP Digital Publishing Award for Compass in June. So that's really nice validation, and I think think it really kind of shows that there is something there around what we can offer with Compass to our partners, but also the value that news brands and publishers can bring. It's not just about, this is a place to reach your audience with advertising. It's also a way that you can really deeply, in Compass's case, understand your audience, sort of a countrywide audience, and the level of insight and research capabilities that we're really lucky that we can offer.
I mean, it's a fascinating product, and I'm super interested about it. I think what I love to hear is kind of the innovation, but just how customer centric and consumer centric the product is, and that it's giving more insights into the audiences and the people that brands are trying to reach. And I guess thinking of consumers, we as an industry tend to be quite focused on, and we talk a lot about the value exchange, but I feel like consumers today are more aware than ever of the value exchange. And I think possibly that's been driven by some of the big streaming platforms moving to ad-supported tiers, and therefore consumers are making that connection between the ads, their eyeballs, and then something either being free or discounted or cheap. How important is it that consumers do start to recognize the value exchange, and there is a reason why a large portion of the internet is free and or at a low cost? And what can media owners like the Telegraph do to both educate consumers but also provide that fair value exchange?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think consumers overall are much more clued up now than ever before on how the internet is working. And I think even just with those visual prompts that we all see all the time, whenever you go to a website and you see that cookie banner or the consent notification, it's such a reminder every single time you're online that actually there is an ecosystem behind what you're just seeing, and that's a relatively recent, obviously, addition to the way that the internet has been working. So I agree with you that people are generally more clued up. I think in terms of that relationship, it has to be a two-way street, and it has to be fair and equitable and transparent. So I think it's really important, for whether it's a news brand like us or any website, to have a really clear and transparent relationship with your readers and to respect them and their time, particularly being clear on how their data is being used. People are more aware now of the data that they represent and how that's might be being applied by businesses that they're using. I think more generally, it's sort of industry wide, there probably could be a better level of education for consumers on the importance that advertising plays in supporting the free internet that we've all been so lucky to enjoy, and that our lives are very, very dependent on now. As of the last sort of 20 years or so, it's just become such an endemic and intrinsic part of our lives. I think sort of leveling up that understanding more generally and at a sort of industry level, perhaps, that advertising really supports that access to the free internet, and also, in the case of the news, access to regulated quality journalism. I think it's so important that people do understand that is paying for things like newsrooms, for journalism, for journalists to do what they do. So I think that's really important. I'm sure there's more that we could do there collectively. But I think, it's so important to focus on that relationship that you have with the reader and their experience. We're really clear on, on that, as I said, that cookie banner that you have on our site. We've been working on that in some time. We also kind of completely rehauled the user experience on our site over the last kind of couple of years. So really optimizing the ad experience, reducing the number of ads, reducing the page load time, making sure that person, when they come to our site to read something, is getting the best possible experience. They're still obviously seeing advertising, but we're making sure that those are fewer ads, they're more impactful. The brand gets better results from that. The ads are more pertinently targeted to that person, and rather than being all over the page and being a distraction, the focus for the reader is really on the access that they get to the editorial, in our case, that they may well have paid for. It could be some of our sort of open access content, but it's really, that's the reason why they have come to our website, is to read that editorial. So it's really focusing on giving them a brilliant access to that, as well as brilliant and beautiful ads to enrich their experience as well, but also to support journalism.
Yeah, completely agree. It is so important. And I think, speaking of consumers and thinking more about consumers, one of the other things that I think consumers are more aware of than ever, and you touched on it a little bit earlier on, is privacy. What is the Telegraph doing to ensure that privacy is placed at the center of your strategy as you launch new products and kind of work with more and more partners?
Yeah, it's such a huge topic, and rightly so, I think, in terms of how we operate, particularly when we're doing new things. So, as I said before, yes, we prioritize the reader's experience. We prioritize that relationship. It's absolutely key to have a positive relationship with our readers. In terms of how we work and how that's changed over the last few years, I think what we've got better at, particularly with innovations, with new products that we're working on, it's that collaboration piece. It's more about people, I think, than ever before. So working across teams, across departments, where we might have been a bit more siloed before, with advertising doing their thing over here and product doing their thing over there. It's much more, I think, collective in terms of how we launch new things and work differently. Our relationships with our legal and privacy and InfoSec teams are paramount and really from the get-go when we launch something new. So I think that's probably the most noticeable thing that's changed is just how we bring teams together now to make sure that everything we're doing is privacy compliant from the start of a project, rather than, bolting it on at the end. It shouldn't really be like that. So that's been really great. And I actually really enjoy that level of collaboration that we now have. I think we've also got a lot better at centralizing the data that we have across the business to make sure that we can make those decisions and build products in the most privacy-centric way too. So yeah, things have changed over the last few years, certainly. And I hope and I think for the better.
I think we're definitely on the right path. And I think the entire industry is much more focused on privacy than ever before. And I think what you said in your response, it's more about people than ever before. I just think that's a great way to look at everything we're doing as an industry and how we move everything forward. As we wrap things up, is there anything we haven't touched on that you would like to, anything you'd like to add before we close things off?
I mean, I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground,
We
to
have.
be honest. We've been all over. But no, I think it's just, with lots of these conversations and events and conferences and panels, it's often easy to fixate on the challenges and on the negatives and on the, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this? And, naturally so, we have to work around different things as they come up, as we've said sort of throughout this conversation. But there's always new solutions. There's always lots to be positive about. So I think, also focusing on the opportunities, on the solutions, on how we can do things better rather than how we can do things just the same is exciting, and that's positive too. So even when there are issues and when there are challenging situations, there's always something new and there's always something more.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at things. Obviously, this podcast is about individuals like yourself who have pioneered new ways to use data to deliver those better customer experiences, this better advertising experience that we've just been speaking about. So when you look at people that you admire in the industry, who would you nominate for me to interview in an upcoming episode?
Yeah, I mean, you've already had so many amazing people on here. You've had a full catalogue of some really brilliant people in the industry. I think the person that I would like to nominate, if I could, would be Anya Liebova, who is Director of Publisher Partnerships at Double Verify. I think she's absolutely brilliant. She's so knowledgeable, and she's got such a unique outlook on the industry from where she sits. So yeah, I think she's a brilliant person in our industry, and she is somebody that I would like to nominate if I could.
That's awesome. Yeah, we will definitely reach out to her and get her on the podcast as soon as possible. Camilla, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for providing such incredible insight into the industry and what the Telegraph is doing. As you say, the Telegraph was a OG signer up of the InfoSum platform and the InfoSum data clean room. And so what I love is those relationships that started a long time ago, but they just continue to innovate. They continue to push more and more boundaries of what we can do with first-party data in a privacy-safe, consumer-friendly way. And so I really appreciate your partnership, the Telegraph's partnership, and just seeing how this industry and how the proposition has evolved. So thank you not only for being on the podcast, but thank you for being such an incredible partner for InfoSum.
Likewise, Ben. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, couldn't agree more. It's so great to work with you and the InfoSum team. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to Camilla for being on the podcast and sharing her insight into the current state of the industry. My favourite quote from that conversation was, "It's more about people than ever before." And I was thrilled by how consumer-centric the Telegraph is in all that it does. All that's left for me to do is remind you to hit that subscribe button so you'll know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.